Welcome to episode 76. Organization can mask your mental load. Hey, y'all. Before we dive in today, I'd love to share podcast reviews that didn't appear on my main page of Apple Podcasts, but were submitted by listeners in the UK and Canada. I'm not 100% sure how the algorithms work, but I do get notified via Chartable if you leave a review outside of the US. Podcasting is often a one-way medium. Hosts put content out into the universe, and I'm always grateful for any words that listeners share back with me. So keep them coming, whether you're US based or listening worldwide. TLI 10 from Canada writes, there's something about Amelia's tone and energy that has me not missing an episode. She tackles tricky subjects with warmth and compassion, and I always feel understood. This podcast is fantastic for organizing tips, but goes well beyond our physical space to help sort through the mental and emotional clutter as well. Y'all, it's amazing. Feels so good. Lossie from Great Britain writes, I love Amelia's style and wisdom. Having found her podcast recently, I am now binge listening to the backlog to catch up. I've already dealt with the practical aspects of decluttering my wardrobe, and now I'm tackling the harder aspect of what I spend my time doing and trying to create more space for what I want to do. Fantastic resource. Just wow, y'all. Your words are so meaningful to me as mine may be to you. My heart is just full. And one little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's topic. To ensure that you stay connected with me, please take a moment to follow a couple simple steps. Open a Pleasant Solution, Embracing an Organized Life on Apple Podcast or YouTube, your favorite streaming platform. Click on the follow button to make sure we're connected and never miss an episode. In return, please know that my 100 hours of listening initiative remains ongoing, and there are approximately 60 hours remaining. My schedule will reopen in August to connect with folks. So more details can be found in your show notes. All right. So I've been thinking about how to structure today's topic for a few months. I'm simply going to share a few thoughts, hopefully in a way that makes sense, because if I wait until I fully fleshed out what I want to say, it may never happen. I've mentioned in past episodes that I'm a recovering, perfectionist. So it's important for me to model what I help others with, and in particular around this topic of navigating perfectionist tendencies. In this case, getting started, sharing, forming this idea by talking it through with you is an example of not getting caught up in needing something to be perfect before getting it out into the world. It's uncomfortable. that's okay. So, in today's episode, I'm going to bring together two topics: the mental load and organization. And I'm going to connect them in an atypical manner. I'm going to challenge the standard narrative a bit, and I'll be addressing those folks who consider themselves to be organized, highly productive, or those striving to become more efficient. For those of you who consider yourselves type A, slightly controlling, or perfectionists, this may hit home even a little closer. And even if you don't fall into this classification or self identify in this way, my hope is that you'll find this perspective thought provoking. First, let me define what I mean by your mental load. The mental load has a variety of names: invisible work, invisible load, or as I often refer to it as, mental clutter. Simply put, it's the information that's occupying space in your working memory. It's the set of things or ideas that's running through your head on a daily basis. My clients often describe their mental load as all the open tabs in my brain. It's your never ending to do list. It's a quiet hum or buzz, and sometimes it shouts loudly, gives us a headache, and it always leaves us feeling exhausted at the end of the day. Now, notice I'm saying us. We all have a mental load. None is really exempt from it. And that point forms the basis of today's conversation. Let me repeat. No one is really exempt from having a mental load. I'm not, you're not. Even if you have tons of virtual or hands-on support in your home or business, you still have a mental load. It's the project management software in our brain that predicts what's ahead and what needs to be done, whether we're the ones who are doing it or not. Getting a better handle on one's mental clutter is one reason folks hire me. Oftentimes, it's a multi step process of decluttering what's not needed, deciding what is needed and valued, organizing this information, then learning how to shift your internal dialogue to be more kind to yourself. This is all internal work. It's quite valuable because it helps you reorient your internal approach to the day to day. And it's a long lasting skill. That being said, the more that I do this work, I see both ends of the spectrum. Yes, I consider myself organized, and a huge part of that sense of organization is a clutter free mindset. I've employed tools and systems to help me organize my mental load in addition to my physical space. This is what you may see from the outside. My life has a lot of moving parts. I use these tools and systems along with self coaching to stay on top of the details and navigate the bumpiness of it all. Now, what I mean by seeing both ends of the spectrum is that I know a lot of professional organizers and folks who consider themselves to be organized like me. Some are perfectionists, some are not. But one common thread for organized folks is that we've gotten really practiced at, really good at organizing our mental load. We use to do lists in a purposeful way. We dump what's in our brain out onto paper or into a task management app on a regular basis. We're great at scheduling what we need to do when. We use decision making filters or sets of questions to act as guidelines about what works in our homes, our lives, our schedules. Essentially, we've figured out how to optimize our time, energy, and brain space in a way that seems super productive. Lastly, we're always looping back to checking in, revisiting systems that have become outdated or less efficient than originally intended. It's a skill we've developed. Brilliant. And based on my own experience, I think it acts as a cloak. What I mean by that is that organization acts as a disguise for our mental load. I think it's another segment of our deeply wired patriarchal programming that leads those of us who are type A, perfectionist leaning, productive folks to overwork. I see it in my industry and I want to name it. It leads those of us who are organized and productive to overwork because we fall into the trap of thinking we're on top of things and that we have room for just one more task or client, or can optimize this one little thing just a little better. Then we beat ourselves up when we can't. It's a trap. Where's the end? There is none. The to do list by nature is a bottomless bucket. Sure, becoming more organized is helpful, but at what cost? The cost is often sneaky. The cost is our mental well being, again, on the other end of the spectrum. Because nearly everything in life is on a continuum, I've noticed that there are a segment of folks for whom becoming more organized, more confident in their decision making, prioritization, boundary setting, time usage would be beneficial. For this group, if this is you, imagine a toy chest that is full of all sorts of toys: tiny cars, building blocks, giant toy dinosaurs, magnets, dollhouse furniture, and half used art kits. Plus, there's another kid there standing beside you, just adding more toys to the toy box every single day. There's lots in the toy chest, but it's hard to play with because it's all jumbled together. There's a level of stress associated with not being able to keep track of everything, knowing if you have all the parts or information, and if there was ever a set of directions on how to do or build the thing. That's your mental load and a bit of decluttering and organizing. and boundary setting would help decrease your stress and help you optimize how to navigate your days. On the other end of the spectrum is a segment of folks who have the exact same toy chest. In their toy chest, everything is organized. It's color coded. It's contained. It's labeled. All the directions and parts are definitely there. And there's another kid there adding more and more toys every single day. Yet, in this instance, if this is you, you're just saying to the kid, just wait a minute. Let me see where that goes. Oh, there's space for it here. Let me check it, color code it, contain it, and label it. See, it'll fit right here. There's no less in this toy chest. Perhaps there's even a bit more because the space has been optimized and there's no time or room to play with any of the toys because that would mess up the system. It's good right now. If we pull something out to play with it, will it even fit back in? It may be better just to look at how pretty and organized it is and be confident that it's getting all done. That's the other mental load, the one that's masked by organization. It's equally stressful because it's all dependent on keeping everything running so very efficiently that the moment one bump in life or more comes along, you can feel utterly crushed and overwhelmed. Maybe this is obvious to y'all, but I don't really hear it being discussed or questioned. High levels of organization and productivity, these don't really prevent or eliminate the mental load. They simply keep it contained and accessible. Yet, more and more, I'm speaking with pro organizers and other organized individuals who are willing to acknowledge how tough it is to be an entrepreneur selling a clutter free lifestyle on the outside, yet they still feel the weight of the clutter on the inside. I can definitely identify with this, and I understand this because it's how I felt before I discovered mindset work. I wondered how I could create all these systems, be so organized and productive, and still feel overwhelmed, stressed, and like there were always a million and one things to be done. Now I can see it more clearly. The mental load was always there. I was just using organizing and productivity to mask its impact. I had improved habits and skills, yet I was squeezing more and more into the toy box. I was in this cycle of believing that I had more time than I actually did, and that there was always a way to become more efficient and effective. In turn, the masked mental load also leads to overworking and potential burnout of a different kind. Hopefully, I've put a few words to something that sounds familiar or relatable. And if so, please reach out to me and share your experience. I'd love to hear it. So, of course, you're wondering, great, now what? As I mentioned, I spent some time recognizing this in myself first. And Coaching 101 says that we're always our best client, first and foremost, meaning look within and creating self awareness leads to the vulnerability and connection with you, the listener. A handful of years ago, I stopped trying to hold it all together. I leave very little in my working memory now. I dump so much out and have built systems to catch my ideas so that I can retrieve them when needed. I also trust that I'll record what is essential, and if anything gets lost or missed, nothing devastating will happen. I like Trello as an online platform for managing information and dates over the long term. I also use the basic notes app on my phone. I scan and digitize a lot of things, and then I set aside time to organize the information from there. If this in and of itself sounds overwhelming, I encourage you to listen back to episode 48 from this day forward and take a deep breath, knowing that starting today is always an option. So, I describe my mental load as clutter free because I give myself permission not to carry much in my brain, and instead I rely on my systems. This is the first tip. The second tip is to learn your inner signals for feeling cluttered. I describe my mental load as clutter free, but that doesn't mean I'm never cluttered. Our brains can act like the kitchen drain, running smoothly with the disposal blades chopping everything up, or they can get clogged slowly and suddenly. Again, being organized just masks this fact. We're all human, and my brain gets cluttered. I've learned to listen closely to my body for signals of stress. It could be lethargy. It could be a racing mind or pulse. It could be constipation or an upset stomach. It could be shallow breathing. Or it could be holding so many things in my brain that I hear the don't forget voice or soundtrack that I'm afraid I'm going to forget. It's just what I hear in my brain. Discover your signals, whatever they might be, search for them and trust your inner wisdom. You're more organized than you think. And for those of you who are super organized, this may be more of a challenge as you may be used to really quieting these inner signals down. For you, there may be a different inner voice, again, of which I'm familiar, that says, I can handle this, or some version of, I'll just find some time. For me, it sounded like it always gets done. Ugh. Sounds harmless, yet it's another way that I say that I'll do more and be more productive. and lean on my organization tools rather than perhaps to say no or limit my efforts. Another signal of mine is that constant looping back or checking in to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. I notice myself checking the tools I mentioned above, Trello, notes, my calendar, because I'm afraid I'll let something slip. This is another secret inner signal that I might be masking that I'm at capacity and need to increase my boundaries for the short term. I solve for feeling cluttered by saying no more often, actively blocking off time in my calendar to be unavailable, or more proactively using my decision making filters to eliminate excess from my mental load or my to do list. I'm not going to get to it, and that's okay. I'm not going to knock it further down on the list and secretly beat myself up or tell myself that when I get time, I'll do it. I'm just going to give it the X. It can earn a slot in my brain, in my life, my business, another time, but not today. You have to be able to see your own inner obstacles in order to address them. It's always okay not to be ready to address them. It's always okay to consciously decide that you like things just the way that they are. Having your mental load masked by organization and productivity isn't a problem unless that you find you're overworking and exhausted from managing it all. For me, I didn't want perfectionism to keep me stuck, to keep me from sharing my voice. So, thank you for listening today. I know this episode wasn't perfect, and despite that, I know it was helpful. That's the space in the middle I hope more and more to inhabit. You're more than welcome to join me. Be well and talk to y'all soon.